Hi, Cake is Eternal. Good vibes to you too. We're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy. We're that. Oh man, that doesn't happen often. I had a wee too much of the martini action last night on Starfleet Boy After Dark, and I still can't speak. Hey, Braxton, what's up?
Hey, Starfleet boy. Hey, guys. How's it going?
Hello.
Saturday greetings.
Saturday
Yes, good
greetings.
evening.
I'm gonna put myself in this corner. There we go. Now I look more natural. There's this weird thing. I have to figure out my new camera, guys. This is the only corner where I look like I'm actually looking at everyone. Otherwise, like if I put myself up at the top there, it just look like I'm staring in space.
You've just got your back to us. Yeah, you just get your back to us. You don't want to know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. We're here to talk about the Star Trek original series episode, "A Private Little War," and it was so much fun. We started talking about it already, so I was like, "We're going live." So now we're live. So now we're going to talk about it. I'm joined by the wonderful panel today, Mr. Earl Grey Trekkie up there. We have Sub Commander Tall. We have our wonderful Dadmiral, Dadmiral, Trek Cat, Ian. We have Braxton and his kitty, which is Esri. That's Esri, right?
Esri? Yep, you're right.
And then Martian Fire Stick or Martian Snake in Eden. So thank you for joining us. So I guess we'll just get right to it. Like, who wants to do the episode summary today? It's a good one. I think it's a fun one. I'll do it if no one wants to do it.
Go. I mean, I'm always happy to try, but go ahead whatever.
I like it when other people do the summary, so I can do like
interjections.
Yeah. Well, also just the chat. Like I can manage the chat and everything. So I'm gonna let you do it, and you always do a good job.
Right.
So yeah, go ahead.
Oh well, yeah. I remember recording this on my VCR off the TV as a kid and watching it a bunch of times. So I haven't seen it in a while, but I think I remember it fairly well. So our intrepid crew, it begins with them on the planet Neural, I believe. They're just doing a survey of this planet, and Kirk had been there 13 years before on a survey mission and established a relationship with the hill people there. There's two kinds of folks there, the hill people and the villagers. And while Kirk is reminiscing...
the village people?
No, the village people, right? Yeah. The blondes and the brunettes, basically. And while they're there, Kirk is reminiscing. He sees in the distance some village people sneaking up on the hill, the village people sneaking up on the hill people, and lo and behold, they've got they're armed with flintlocks, or they're armed with rifles, where this technology they should not have been achieved by now. So he's very concerned, and he wants to warn them off because he sees his old buddy Tyree under threat. Spock tells him, "You can't use your phaser. That's violating the Prime Directive." So he throws a rock with incredible aim and startles the villagers, who they shoot off their rifles, and then they go chasing after our crew. And Spock gets shot in the back. Fortunately, his heart is where his liver should be, or something like that. So he's probably going to make it, but it's touch and go. So they beam up. McCoy is down there too, because the planet is a pharmacological paradise. Basically, all the roots and shrubs and stuff have whatever chemicals you want. So they're back on the Enterprise, and Dr. Mabenga is there, who interned in a Vulcan board, and he's working on Spock. And then it's revealed that there are Klingons in the area. So now Kirk he's curious and he's angry because he's upset about what he knew down on that planet, which was such a peaceful society. So he and McCoy prepare to beam down while Spock is being tended to by Dr. Mabenga and Nurse Chapel. And they put on their traditional garb, which I believe were sheepskin coats turned inside out, and then had the arms cut off to save a little money. They get this issued by Bill Theiss, and they head down to the planet. And they're going to look for Tyree to find out what's going on. But before they find him, there's a Mugatu attack, which is the big megafauna in the area, and attacks Kirk before McCoy is able to phaser it. And Kirk takes the full venom, and he's in bad shape. So some of the hill people find them in this condition, and McCoy pleads for them for help. They bring them back to their caves where they live. And one of the villagers, or Tyree's wife, is a Kanutu woman, Nona, who has this basically the local witch people, I think they're described as. But before we see that, there's a little scene where we meet Tyree and Nona, and it's clear Tyree is kind of Nona's simp, if that's the right word. I don't know. She holds the power in this relationship for sure. And she gets him, and we also immediately
what Nona
see
wants, Nona gets. I keep saying it. I love saying that.
That's the episode in a nutshell. Well, except for the end, she gets it in the end. But we see her pharmacological ability right there, because she kind of uses some little leaf on him that makes him dazed and horny. But then Kirk is in the cave, so she's got to go attend to business. So she comes back and sees McCoy heating the rocks, I think, with his phaser, and she realizes, okay, these guys have these must be the special guys he told me about from years ago. And she agrees to save Kirk, which she does in a very unusual mystical ritual involving a brown blob called a mako root, and Kirk is cured. But already the wheels are turning in Nona's head that maybe we can get these guys to help us out now that the villagers are on top of us. So Kirk recovers. Meanwhile, they probably cut back to the ship just to check in on Spock, and he's still touch and go. He's getting better, but Dr. Mabenga tells Nurse Chapel, well, if he starts to come around, do whatever he says, do whatever he wants. Unusual instructions, but we'll remember that for later. So then what? Yeah, Kirk and Tyree are catching up, and it's a joyful reunion muted by the dire circumstances involved. So Kirk wants to find out all about the fire sticks that the villagers now have, which he suspects the Klingons are behind. And Nona is right there with him, wanting to get what they can get out of it. So they plan a little raid on that's sort of a spy mission on the villagers that evening, and they head out there, and we see there is indeed a Klingon there, Krell, played by Ned Romero, who would reappear in the Next Generation in the 7th season.
And his name's not actually mentioned in the episode, but that is his name. It's Krell, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, same with the planet name, I think, isn't mentioned.
That's right.
But anyway, so they see the village furnace. They see that, yes, it is the Klingons who are furnishing them with that's right, with the fire sticks, and they just barely get away after McCoy's tricorder accidentally, it's like a smoke alarm goes off, and the Klingons are alerted, or the Klingon is alerted to their presence, and the village people chase them out. So then, if I remember correctly, that's when Kirk and company start to introduce the flintlocks to the hill people, and they show Tyree, well, not Tyree actually, they show what's his name, like Yona or something, is Utan, his like second in command, how to fire them. And Tyree is kind of quiet and apprehensive about this, because he knows this spells trouble for the future of his planet to have these instruments of violence introduced, even though they need them. And there's a very moving scene, probably my favorite scene in the episode, or the best scene in the episode, where McCoy and Kirk have a discussion in the cave about the pros and cons of supplying weapons to these people, and supplying weapons that aren't superior but are equal, so that there's this balance of power and the planet could develop the way they think it's supposed to develop, which is a status quo between the two parties. So Kirk decides to go ahead with the plan to supply them with the weapons. Then I think we cut back to the ship, and Spock is coming around, and he orders Nurse Chapel to strike him in the face a few times, which she reluctantly begins to. And Scotty comes in, and of course, she must be an hysterical woman. So he pulls her back. This can't be right.
Says, what are you doing, woman?
Yeah. Fortunately, the male doctor pops in, Dr. Mabenga, so he can be trusted. So then he starts slapping
If I were Nurse
Spock
Chapel,
around.
I would have slapped Scotty.
Not a great moment, but of course it's unusual to see your nurse hitting a patient, and maybe they had some BDSM thing going on. She does like Spock, so who knows? But Spock comes back to consciousness, aided by the pain, and he's basically completely recovered. So Cut back down to the planet, and Kirk knows he has to convince Tyree by going through Nona. So he finds Nona sensuously bathing in the. Well, no, that actually gets cut from this episode. She's just done bathing. She was like, when he encounters her, she had been bathing. And anyway, so trying to convince her that the best thing would be to do this status quo, this equal buildup of weapons, rather than arming them with overwhelming weapons. But she works her magic on him, and he, temporarily is smitten by her. Who can blame him? And while he is, suddenly the Mugatu's mate appears and is running around. And does she actually? I forget what happens here. Does she kill the Mugatu with the phaser? No, Kirk kills it. Kirk kills it. Oh, and then she gets the phaser. Yeah. And then she's like, enough with these people. They're not taking enough action. And she's going to go to the villagers with this phaser now that she has possession of it. So Tyree, during that scene before the Mugatu comes, Tyree sees them canoodling, and he's, just hating life. So he throws down the guns and he runs back to the village. He can't deal with it. But McCoy convinces him to, don't leave the gun laying around. Let's see what's going on. But the episode, and I may be missing something, but the episode pretty much wraps up with Nona going to the villagers and trying to convince them of this small box and its potential. But
and then they try to rape her, basically.
They see different potential in Nona. So there is an assault on her with, if you look quickly, the buildings of Los Angeles in the background. Bronson Canyon. Yeah.
I didn't see that.
And Kirk and Tyree and the hill people show up, and there's a small battle, and Tyree overcomes, because he's so angry about Nona dying, he overcomes his distaste for violence and smashes the head of one of the villagers in. And it ends on a very sad note. I mean, it ends on, well, this is what we're going to have to do, arm them, and now they're in conflict like this. So Kirk philosophically asks for those serpents for the Garden of Eden. And then we hear that music that is only heard one time in the entire original series by Gerald Fried. Yeah, that closing music which is sort of, a downer.
Like a somber, yeah. Well, also, they didn't do their usual banter on the bridge type of, they don't always do it, but they didn't do the banter on the bridge ending this time.
Yeah.
And, it was interesting.
Yeah. So it's definitely a different note. That's pretty much it. So
that's an awesome summary. Like it shows that you really like this episode because you remembered it well.
Like it. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's not a popular episode. It's a little heavy-handed, people think, but I enjoy it. So
excellent. So what did you all think? Let's start with you, Braxton. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. I thought the episode was really good. Typically, I'm not so into TOS, but I thought this was an interesting episode. I do enjoy a witchy woman, and Nona was definitely that. When she was healing him, and she used the root, and she was doing like witch motion,
like all that.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed this episode.
Excellent. I wanted to know more about the healing, like how of course there's like a myriad of science fiction explanations or Trek explanations you could come up with, but it was cool that Dr. McCoy was like stunned, like he did not expect it to be that way. And I love Nona. She's I want to
and curious too. I mean,
that's my drag. That's my drag persona. Nona is my drag persona. So if I ever do drag, I'll do it as Nona. sorry.
You want to go around enchanting men?
Yes, exactly. But I won't use drugs, and I'll get their consent. It'll be a different Nona.
I wrote down that during that whole sequence, that must have been the equivalent for the 60s of like Cinemax, because it's like it's super erotic. Like if you watch the way it's shot, it almost looks like she's reaching down and doing something to Kirk. Well, because the way it's shot, it's like just his upper body, and she's got one hand off camera.
Oh, sure.
And he's like, she's just like,
yeah.
It's very erotic, but yeah, I would be
The
a
whole
little
second
more.
act, because Spock is
Yeah.
getting slapped and going harder, harder. It's like, what the fuck is going on this episode?
No, and that whole the whole ritual with Nona, I mean, achieves a climax. I mean, it's a very orgasmic kind of scene, and
Yeah,
yeah,
Do
I
you-
mean, it really was unusual, and I think NBC was getting a little sick of moments like that. Not that there was a lot of them, but the
They were
traditional
pushing the envelope. They were pushing the envelope.
they were, and the traditional wisdom on the show was that the ratings were so bad, and that's why it was canceled. They weren't that bad, from what I've been reading about it.
Oh,
But
wow.
NBC really did not like. They didn't have a great relationship with Roddenberry, and they didn't like just in general
Well,
some of the
I mean,
sexualization.
the
Neither
show
did
was
the writer of this
expensive, too,
episode.
so
Yeah,
as
the
much
writer.
as they cut the budget over the time, the show was still expensive compared to
Oh yeah,
your average like
Big
Brady
time.
Bunch.
It was a
thing of the
loss.
time.
They were always operating at a loss. Yeah.
It does show. I mean, the production value is great, especially seeing it remastered. Like in these, this episode was almost all of it was pretty much on location, and it looks great. Like it looks just like those westerns that were airing at the time, and some like what was it, Gunsmoke or what else? What's the famous one?
Rawhide.
Rawhide. Yeah, like it looks just as good as any of those. Bonanza. Thank you.
Bonanza.
But also the writer, I forget his name right at the moment, but he
Don Ingles.
Thank you, Don Ingles. He actually was sick of Roddenberry too, because Roddenberry took out a lot of his. I think it was more Vietnam. The parallels to Vietnam were more heavy in his version, I guess, and Gene Roddenberry really took a lot of that and kind of pared it down for it. But going back to something you were talking about earlier, do you think the episode was like erotic or camp? Because I feel like it was more. It was erotic though, but I feel like there was also a lot of camp in it. Like it was a little cheeky, but I don't know. Maybe that's just.
I think for its
maybe
day,
that's time.
Yeah, I think that's time. I think in '67 or '8, whenever this one was, I think it probably would have just come across as erotic rather than campy. But I don't know.
Drugs, sex, and power.
To be honest,
was
I
one
think
of my
a lot of TV of that era was camp, wasn't it? I mean, you had you had Batman, which was uber camp and all that stuff. So it was really of the time. But yeah, I think you said going back to Nona and Kirk, it was meant to be like a sex scene because Kirk rolled over and went to sleep afterwards. So but yeah, I think the campness is just literally of its time in the late '60s.
Cake is Eternal says, I would have loved to have seen a sly smile on Nurse Chapel's face given the opportunity to slap Spock. Yeah.
Spock gets slapped a lot, doesn't he? He gets slapped by the Romulan commander. He gets slapped by his mom. He's slapped by Kirk in Naked Time. He's slapped by he gets a lot of slaps.
By the way, welcome, Father. I was very unceremonious. You just popped in, and I didn't even say hello to you. So hello, Father. What? Oh, he just. What the hell? I think he did that on purpose. I'm not sure.
I think so.
He just wanted to lurk.
He just
he wants to be like Slender Man, just be in the back.
Maybe he was gonna say something, and then he maybe hit the wrong. Did you hit the wrong button, or were you gagging? Like, what was that a gag? Gagging, not gagging. Father,
I wasn't gagging.
Speaking of erotic turns,
what did you think of this episode, Father?
I like it. I don't like it as much as I did when I was a kid. I used to really like this one. I was really into Nona as a kid. And I really liked the Klingons. So whenever the Klingons showed up in the original series, I was happy. But this is kind of the use of the Klingons here, where they're just kind of more of a story device than actually like the central focus of the episode. They're not really driving the plot. It's kind of how like Berman era Star Trek would use Romulans. And it was like, we just need like a bad guy to go and like do this plot stuff. So that's kind of the use of the Klingons here. But no, I liked them. I think that the Vietnam stuff, it is a little too heavy-handed. Like Kirk didn't need to like spell it out, and it plays weird now. It's almost kind of a at the time in 1968, 8, the world probably viewed this differently, but today it kind of plays as kind of a defense of the American participation in the Vietnam War, which I think just a few years after this aired, most people around the world and most people throughout the country would agree that it's kind of a mistake, and actually no one ended up like wanting this war. So it doesn't age great. But yeah, it does give us a lot of cool stuff. We get the Magato. I think Tyree is really cool. I love Tyree. Yep. It's a good Prime Directive episode. It's an early Prime Directive episode, like establishing that Star Trek trope, which is a classic idea. And yeah, this is before it was done to death in the Berman era. So that's cool. And the Magato is just one of those iconic original series thing. I'm glad that we're going to see those again in Star Trek Lower Decks season 2 somehow.
Oh wow! Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of memorable stuff. I don't think that the quality here, it doesn't quite measure up to the first half of the original series. We're definitely in like the second half of the original series. So like the really good episodes, from this point on, sadly like don't live up to like the really good stuff we had in season 1 or the first half of season 2. That's kind of the downer of like binging the original series. Is it's a show that gets worse the further you go.
Yeah. It's interesting that you thought the Vietnam stuff was heavy-handed when, according to what I read, Gene Roddenberry pared it down. So it must have been.
I don't know how it could have been more. He literally says like, "Oh yeah, like those wars in Southeast Asia in the 20th century."
Yeah. I heard he amped it up. I mean, he was.
Okay.
That was
Maybe
his
I read
thing.
it wrong.
I mean, he was always wanting to be the Jonathan Swift of his day, and like, but yeah, I mean, for sure he changed the script whichever way he changed it, and Don Ingles was not happy, which is why I used a pseudonym.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it does come across as heavy-handed. But what I like about that is that the ending is ambiguous. I mean, the ending's, well, what do you do in this? I mean, what are your options here? There's no good options. I mean, you could walk away from this. You could give them overwhelming weapons. You could give them equal weapons. And it's not a tidy ending the way so many Star Trek episodes are. So, I kind of like that about it.
Someone already, I mean, because it wasn't them, it was the Klingons. But somebody already kind of started the snowball. Yeah, got it started. So
it's actually sad in the expanded universe. Apparently, Kirk just before Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Kirk goes back to the planet and they find out that now it's not just 2 factions. Like both sides have kind of splintered off into 5 factions, and they're all fighting. And then even wilder, which I was so like, I was like, okay, this episode is bonkers, but this is even more bonkers. But apparently, in one of the TNG era novels, someone does genetic experiments on a Mugato, and he becomes sentient and serves in Starfleet. So I don't know anything beyond that, but his name is Ensign Janus, and so he's like a Mugato officer.
Oh, he's named after the Janus Prohaska, the guy who was in the suit. That's cool.
Oh, that's cool. That is very cool. But yeah, so that now I'm like, who cares about Tuvix? Ensign Janus is way more amazing. I want to see him on screen. He should appear on Lower Decks or something. It'd be pretty awesome. Quick plug for Father's Lower Decks discussion. Go check it out on Text Trek. We had a lot of fun sharing what we want to see in Lower Decks 2, or what we'd like to see pop up in Lower Decks season 2. Did you guys notice the Klingon look changed? And I liked it. I thought it was like very with the eyebrows and like kind of like the hair and stuff like that, and like I don't know, it was like a wilder, more Klingon look that kind of matches what comes later with the ridged foreheads and stuff like that. A little bit, more like.
Well, they did employ an actor that actually had hair, because a lot of them they employed actors.
Right.
I do want to say I admire that the Klingons were not just giving them technology outright, but slowly teaching it to them. They gave them the flintlock. Then they were going to come back later with rifling. Then they were gonna say, "Oh, this will let you shoot further." Like it wasn't just here's the best gun possible.
Mhm.
They were kind of like slowly evolving their knowledge of the weaponry. It's interesting that was a little detail.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think maybe to make it seem like it could have been natural, but I mean, the real weapon they gave them was, things like when they were arguing over some woman they were dividing, like give them to the guy who killed the most of her people. Like the real weapon they gave them was the idea that you can be on top of these other people by violence. Who knows what the relationship of the hill people and the villagers were before, but I don't think it was necessarily violent. But
Right,
it doesn't matter. Almost the weapons don't matter. It's like that idea of conflict was what the Klingons brought, and that was going to,
What do you
be
think
a
the
problem
Klingons
forever.
were up to? It wasn't clear to me. Like, are they eventually going to incorporate them as like part of their empire and like use them as like,
I mean, they tell the one guy they're gonna make him a governor in the Klingon Empire,
right?
but I don't see. It's never clear why they give a shit about the planet or the people. Like they don't say, "Oh, like there's some resource." Oh, maybe the
The
witches.
herbs,
Oh,
the
the
magic.
herbs.
I don't know.
That's true. That's a good
Mhm.
point. That could be it.
That's how
But
they
it
make
just-
like blood wine.
I I guess there's like a lot of secrets that they have to unlock, and so they're gaining the trust of. Yeah, it could be that, and of course, like on top of it, you have extra soldiers to throw it in front of your opponents, like for battles you don't want to like have Klingons fight or whatever. So annexing them to the Empire could just help the war like efforts of the Klingons. So that's a good point. Ruben, what did you think overall of this episode? Like, what are your thoughts on this episode?
I enjoyed it overall. It's a pretty good episode. I mean, I guess it's a little unfair, but I think the whole Spock thing is just kind of pointless. Like, there's no point to him getting shot at all. Like, it's just kind of there to fill in the B story.
Well,
Because
that was funny how he got shot and there was no actual exit wound. It was just like a green splotch. Like,
And McCoy gets shot like in the arm, and there's no there's like a mark and blood, but there's no hole. It's like paintball. You're getting shot with paintball.
I think, Father, if you're trying to talk, you're on mute, unless you're talking to someone else.
Oh, I was talking to someone else.
Oh, sorry. Carry on, Father.
Like I would have liked. I mean, this is unfair because I'm able to look back and see kind of what the episode's lacking, because I really feel like the B story should have been Spock negotiating with the Klingons about why the hell are you doing this, and then you could have had the whole action story. It's like kind of thoughtful story, and then Spock negotiating, trying to figure out why the Klingons are here, while Kirk is doing the shenanigans down there with the guns and all that stuff.
Tyree really believed in the beginning that the villagers would eventually find their way back to peace, so that would have been an interesting alternative, and and I think perhaps like something more sensible, which is to convince everyone that after you like unveil the Klingons, like instead of giving more weapons, like why not try to intervene in fact and like get the villagers to realize, oh, maybe this isn't the way, and but I guess you still have to balance it out because the Federation can't just stay there and guard the hill people. What was it? Not the hill. What was it?
The village people.
Yeah, the hill people and the
Oh,
village.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The hill folk. But yeah, so it is a tough question that the episode poses. It's really really tough. Yeah. What about you, our Admiral? What did you think of this episode?
It is an enjoyable episode. I find it quite odd that they pared down the Vietnam War, considering a couple episodes down the line you've got Omega Glory, which is just out and out a comment on the Vietnam War. It's got the erotic value. It's got, as a young kid, Nona for me, and she still is one of the most beautiful women ever to grace Star Trek. So Nancy Kovac, what a beautiful woman.
She also dated, I found out, William Shatner.
William Shatner.
from you guys actually on Twitter.
Yeah. I think that was because he was separated from his wife at the time, wasn't it? The mother of his children. So it was around about that time.
They bonded souls, so she owned him or whatever.
That's what it was.
It's only legend. It's only legend.
It's only legend.
Well, I mean,
Hollywood legend.
She must have been good because he fell asleep. So afterwards, she must have been good. But yeah, no, I find it a really enjoyable one. It's good to listen to you guys say, especially say about the Klingons, because it becomes superfluous to the story. It's like a few things they've done in Star Trek. They bring something in, and you think they're going to bring more into it, like why the Klingons are there, but they tend to forget about why they're there. It's like a partial vehicle, but they don't go into it more. And I feel they missed a trick.
Well, and you guys, and from when you guys were telling me that somebody rewrote the episode,
It was Gene Rod. Yeah,
that's a common issue when you rewrite somebody else's
yeah.
work. Is that you lose some? You kind of neglect
The
a detail of what they were putting in there, and then it loses a connection. So that makes sense.
It's a shame because it looked like there was the thought was there, but they forgot about it. Gene Roddenberry, and as much as they say he's the Albatross of the galaxy, he really did piss people off, didn't he?
Yes.
After the motion picture, they didn't want him on the movies anymore, and after this, so yeah, it's there. But no, it's an enjoyable episode. It's not going to tax your brains. It's quite a good. I find it quite a good. It doesn't drag. It goes quite quickly. Before you know it, it's finished, and you've enjoyed the ride and everything else. So I do like that, and I always like when there's a little bit of conflict between Kirk and McCoy, because it's always McCoy sometimes is always like the angel whispering in his ear, saying, really, are you doing the right thing? Especially when he was saying about introduction of the guns to the mountain people, and and Spock's stopping him to use the phaser, so he throws the rock to grab their attention when they first see him.
It's interesting that he had to remind Captain Kirk about that.
I think he gets caught up in the moment.
Yeah. I know. I agree.
So it's always that bit. It's not until you even sort of like for Wrath of Khan, he still gets caught up in the moment. But the older Kirk isn't so. He's more introspective. But and you see that more in the 2009 Star Treks, where Kirk really does jump in before he thinks about without thinking about it. But yeah, I do like those bits where they're the angels whispering in his ear saying, don't do this, and putting him right. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a good, entertaining episode.
It's still pretty relevant, I want to say, because what certain countries do in the Middle East with certain groups of people. I'm making it vague so that you don't get flagged by the YouTube algorithm.
Oh, thank you.
But it's still so hyper relevant to things. It's interesting how, I know we've been talking about Vietnam, but I kept thinking throughout the episode how relevant it was to things happening today, and the way weapons are given to one side or another, depending on who needs what.
Except in real life, it's a little more malevolent. The intention behind it than it was perhaps here on the side of the Federation, but
or the Klingons, because the Klingons just seemed like, hey, we'll make an ally of these people. I was like, okay, that makes sense. They doesn't seem like they're not doing that bad of a thing.
And it's not external forces that influence us. Unfortunately, it's our own wicked minds that are creating these machinations. Oh wow, I sound really bitter about humanity. I'm sorry. Commander Tall, you gave a beautiful summary, so feel free to share some extra thoughts. But you sent this image, so
I've been holding on to that one. I'm glad it got used. Yeah, there's your Ensign Janus, Ensign Bananas, set course for Bronson Canyon.
He hits the guy next to him and poisons him.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've talked a bunch about it already, but yeah, I like this episode. I can't improve on what has been said. I think yes, it's entertaining. Nona gives it some exotic sex appeal. The pacing is good, and it's preachy. I mean, it's not, it's barely a metaphor for Vietnam, but the thing I got out of it, it's good. It's good preaching. I mean, it's not that the message is good, but that it's clear, and I like the fact that that the ending is unresolved the way it is. I mean, I found that always. I remember being very moved by that ending as a kid, and just kind of, this is unusual for this show. But I think there's, good character moments between particularly Kirk and McCoy, as Ian was saying. And, I like that McCoy is the one guy who can really push back against Kirk, whisper in his ear, yes, but also kind of get in his face, like, you shouldn't be doing this.
Kirk even says, in the scene when he asked McCoy to come down with him, he's like, I need, someone I trust to, kind of, I think Kirk knows it's too personal for him, and so he needs someone else.
Exactly, he's too close to it because of Tyree. So, which is probably why he draws his phaser too. Instead of.
And he even says something like, I'm concerned about something
I once knew down there.
Yeah, I once knew down there. Yeah, not just Tyree, but the whole, just like how he he does describe it beautifully when he's like, how he talks about unlike on Earth, these people actually just chose to be harmonious and live off the land and stuff like that. So, and then it's spoiled, of course. His Eden is spoiled. So that's very cool. Robbie, you've been sitting there. I'm very curious. What are your thoughts on this episode?
I thought it was quite a flawed episode, but it was not overshadowed by those flaws because it had a very profound and thoughtful message, and I always like stories that have that because they usually bump it up a bit. Sometimes when I'm watching Star Trek, I don't get the message, or I get there was a message, but I don't know what it was, and I have to figure it out. And sometimes I enjoy that because it's just, I'm still thinking about it in my head, but even though I got the message, I was still thinking about this episode after I watched it. And then I got a quote down for daily Star Trek quotes when Kirk's, he's saying, we were once like you, spears, arrows, and he says, our weapons grew faster than our wisdom.
Very nice. I'm glad you got that quote out of it for your series. That's cool. So, Robbie, how much do you know about the conflict in Vietnam, and how much is taught in school these days? If you don't mind me putting you on the spot a little.
Know hardly anything about the Vietnam War.
As it's known in Vietnam, the American War, by the way. Yeah,
thank you.
I was in Vietnam. Yeah, I was in Vietnam. They told me that. I was like, that's interesting. It makes a lot of sense.
Is Tyree's wig on backwards? Which we haven't said anything about. The name is genius.
That was a wig?
As a person who wears wigs, I've put it on backwards, and it does look exactly like that. So I will say it's true. It was weird for Kirk to insist that McCoy accompany him to the planet when Spock was in danger, but it gave the character of Mabenga, who we may see much more of. What did you guys think of Dr. Mabenga?
He's a good doctor. He's actually been in the Star Trek Vanguard books. He's on the Vanguard bit, so he's introduced, and he actually gets transferred to the Enterprise from the Vanguard. So, if any of you guys haven't read the Vanguard books, they are brilliant. It's a brilliant series of books.
How might he be in Strange New Worlds? What was I can't remember at the moment. How they tie him in.
I don't know. As I said, I think because he's a character they'll probably used. But in the books, he'd been with Vanguard, and he gets transferred just around about the time that you actually get to see him in this episode. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to tie him in Strange New Worlds.
I loved him and the actor. I thought it was strange that they just introduced him kind of unceremoniously, like I welcomed you guys. You know, it was like there was no but in a way, I guess it suggests that sick bay or the medical department's like much bigger than perhaps we thought. Like maybe he's just, you know, he's been there doing other things. Like I don't know.
It's pretty
weird.
Inconsistent, as is typical for TOS. But yeah, you get that. He comes back in another episode. Actually, I just saw that the other day for All Star Trek. I was live tweeting that, and not only is Dr. Mabenga in it, but Dr. Mabenga refers to a Dr. Sanchez in that episode too. So yes, there's sometimes implications. There's a big staff, but I think in other episodes it's pretty clear McCoy is the only one. So anyway. I like him.
Very cool. Yeah, I like him too. I hope we do see the character return in Strange New Worlds, because it would be funny if he just appears like, you know, like every now and then,
slapping somebody.
So yeah, he slaps someone. But like, it'd be funny if they kept the unceremonious nature of him, or maybe he'll be a more of a prominent character on Strange New Worlds.
I want to reenact a scene, a day in the life on the Enterprise. Hi, I'd like to make an appointment with Dr. McCoy. Oh, sorry, Dr. McCoy's not in sickbay right now. We don't know where he is. He's never there. He's never there. I've been coughing for weeks.
I guess the CMO suggests there's other MDs under him. So yeah, it's like it is cool. Yeah, it is cool to see.
Maybe Dr. Mabenga only has one treatment. It's like, I've got stage 3 cancer. Don't keep slapping me. But it's like that's what he does. He's gonna slap you.
If I slap you hard enough, I'll cook a chicken. What?
You're human? Oh, I'm sorry, I only do Vulcan. Yeah.
There you go.
What did you go ahead, sorry, Robbie.
I thought the actress that played Tyree was a bit over the top, and it kind of distracted me a bit from the nuance her character had.
Oh, I think you're meaning are you talking about Nona?
Nona?
Tyree was the one guy.
Yeah, Nona was definitely over the top. I wish there was a jazz number.
Poor girl was running barefoot at one point.
I mean, but she's a woman with ambition.
Yeah.
She's a witch. She's enchanting men. She kind of has to be over the top.
Yeah,
okay, so why does she? Do you guys get why? I guess she was fed up with the hill people, so because they were so peaceful, and I guess she wanted that part was interesting to me. Like she actually defects from her husband and
she
her
kind of wants the conflict.
Adopted people. Yeah, she wants the conflict.
Power is they say power is an aphrodisiac, don't they? So I think she wanted power. She just wanted to control men. Basically, she just wanted men to do her bidding, and she wanted that power. Maybe go into like the more powerful chieftain, whoever that was, that was doing it for her, basically.
Well, and that's another missed opportunity to me, in my mind, of the episode, where they could have had her kind of keep seeing that there's another level. Oh, first the fire stick, because she never meets the Klingons, but they could have had her meet the Klingons, then be like, oh, I can enchant the Klingons, and I'll take their ship, and now I have her ship, you know, and like kind of like keep escalating, and made her like more of a villain. The episode's just kind of like, you know, guns to people.
You know, I was waiting for her to fire the phaser, and she never did. You know,
it didn't go off. I wonder if it was
how to. She didn't know how to. That's You see her trying to do that, she couldn't. So, I think when they were trying to rape, when obviously they took her and they think, oh, okay, we're going to rape her. She tried to use the phaser and she couldn't.
They had the child.
That's right.
The child lock was on.
Christopher,
it's fingerprint identification. She should know that by now.
Christopher has brought up a good point about Dr. Mabenko.
Was that a big deal in the 1960s to have an African American as a doctor on television? That almost seems like a bigger deal than Uhura as a communications officer. Interesting. I think it would have been a big deal. Yeah.
It was, but interestingly, that actor Booker Bradshaw, he had played doctors on a couple other shows in the 60s, and I was reading an interview of his, and he said he was just so sick of playing doctors, and like he came from a couple of people in his family were doctors. There's even some talk about there being a spin-off of Dr. Mabenga.
Man.
But I think I think it was pretty unusual.
Yeah. Is Tyree's wig is also confirming it was a big deal. Yes, so that's cool. Yeah. It seemed like it seems like it would have been a big deal. Of course, now it's like thank goodness TV has much better representation.
To be serious, even all the slapping of a woman on a man and then a black man on a Spock is essentially a white man. So like, even that is like kind of like I was like, oh damn! Like I was thinking, wow, 1968 or whatever.
1968, yeah.
I was like, this is this episode's like, fuck it, the show's gonna get canceled. Just throw everything out there. Do
it. Well, I don't know. Were they facing cancellation constantly? Were they under that threat? I guess. Like, it was like,
they remember that there was the big. I think for the coming to the end of the second season, Star Trek was cancelled. They were going to cancel it. It wasn't until they had everybody sending letters in and saying we want Star Trek, we want that. So that was what we were getting close to. Star Trek was going to be no more after season 2.
Oh wow!
So the third season was made, but then they canceled it anyways, and then there was more letter writing, and then we got a movie. Wow, Star Trek is really.
Yeah, you had the letter writing campaign, which got on for season 3, but they moved season 3 to basically a time slot.
Yeah.
And I think they did that, and then that's when they said that's it, no more. I think everybody had lost. Had lost the not the will to live, but they had lost the impetus to actually try and save it. I think that the company just said no. It wasn't until it got into syndication that they realised that it was as popular as it was.
Tyree's backward wig says, "I sent a letter.
Oh, that's awesome!
And lined school paper. My mom used a pen on hers. That's really awesome. Yeah." I hope those letters are preserved somewhere, like maybe the Roddenberry family has them, or maybe the studio kept them, and who knows? They should go in the Smithsonian. I wish you could read them digital. Someone should digitize them. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, they all would have gone to NBC, so I don't know what NBC would have done with them, but
they probably burned them. They were like, no.
I could just imagine the studio, the cost of the show, because you think about TV at the time, like. British sci-fi, you had Doctor Who, which was nowhere near the production value of a Trek episode at the time. You had The Prisoner, which was now like a space traveling sci-fi show. And then over here, you had things like Lost in Space. And if you watch any episode of Lost in Space, it's the same set every week, just a different colored background and some different things moved around. And then you had Star Trek trying to do this crazy amount of stuff.
This episode, I keep saying this episode is bonkers because there's so much going on in this episode. It's really good. I mean, like the back and forth, like there's a lot of things up in the air, like what you said in your summary, like, Kirk is in peril, so is Spock, like, so you have like the characters kind of having to like fend for themselves without leadership, and there's just so much going on. It is a really, even with like some of the things that don't hold up any longer and the heavy-handedness, perhaps, like as Ruben said, I can easily see the kind of like the metaphor being transposed to other things, and just like also just the whole story is just it held up. I watched it twice and it was entertaining to watch both times, so very cool.
I think this is the only episode where all 3 main characters get hurt.
Maybe,
because
it might be,
because obviously Spock gets shot, then obviously Kirk gets attacked by Mugatu, and then also and then McCoy gets shot in the arm. I know it's only a nick, but they all get hurt.
Yeah.
Did anybody else at any point think of Zoolander when they saw the Mugatu?
Yes, I did. I 100% thought of Zoolander. Robbie, have you seen the movie Zoolander?
Could you describe it briefly?
Zoolander, it's about fashion. It's like
Ben Stiller's like a really dumb model.
And of course, it's Star Trek fan extraordinaire Ben Stiller, isn't it? And that's no doubt why the evil fashion designer is named Mugatu is probably intentional.
And he had white hair as well, and he did have
So
and he has like a little dog too, I think, right? Like a little white dog.
Yeah, a little white dog. So Robbie, now on your tweet when you were like, was the uniform tailor made? I posted a picture of Will Ferrell as Mugatu, and I wrote no doubt. So that was like the in joke for that. So. I think all the green blood on Spock's shirt is new. Oh, really?
Oh wow.
Oh, well, it's weird that it's how it's done. It's interesting. It's like, I guess Buckshot could do that without actually like without penetrating the. No, it would have still made holes
I
all
don't know
over
because
the.
it's weird because she gets shot in the back, but then the blood's on the front.
Mhm.
But
Well,
then there's no
suggesting
holes on the
there was an-
side.
Yeah, suggesting there was an exit. I think I'm gonna
Right.
chalk that up to like in the '60s you couldn't really be too graphic, like
Oh, no,
like
for sure, for
oddly. even-
Basically, when back in.
Because even when they stab her boobie, you see they totally cover it up. Like they don't.
Yeah, yeah.
They do it like out of the way so you don't see anything at all. No
Right.
entry. No.
Yeah.
Maybe
Before-
Spock.
It wasn't. I mean, you didn't see an awful lot of blood, even in films. You didn't see a lot of blood until the 70s. When the 70s came in, that's really when blood was really seen on TV and
That's
in the
when
film
movies grew
movies.
hair on their fucking balls, baby.
Okay, Ruben, I'm just gonna remind you it's PG-13.
Sorry.
You crossed your limit. Jeez, Ruben.
I love the 70s.
You know, even when
Actually,
she
I must
struck
admit,
him,
I thought Ruben was going to wear his wig again today.
I know. I thought you were gonna wear it too.
Oh, yeah, I should put it backwards.
like even when she struck him with the rock, Captain Kirk, I was like waiting to like see her actually strike him, but instead it was just kind of like implied.
Yeah.
Yeah, they cut away at the last
Mhm.
moment.
It's funny that I had to censor you like in the 60s, like if this was a 60s show, and then Starfleet Boy After Dark is like the 70s, which is your true home.
I'm still laughing about last night's episode.
What did you guys think of the little planet the witch doctor plant? Oh, the
Plant,
witch doctor
yeah.
uses to get Kirk as her lover. I'm not sure that it is effective prop like a triple is.
I thought it was a rat at first.
No, I think
You mean-
well, maybe Chris, you're talking about the maca root, which we all agreed, and I even made a banner for it. Looks like a poop. So the maca root, but also we haven't talked about it too much, but she gives both of the men this aphrodisiac kind of to like
Wow.
Yeah, like
Basically,
the weed
like,
that she
make them-
rubs on them.
yeah, just make them aroused and incensed, like they're
Yeah.
they're like pretty crazy. And this reminded me of I guess like in a weird way that's like a date rape drug. Like it's like she's kind of like using this drug to like subdue these men.
Or it's Viagra for
Or
the
it's-
21st century.
Well, yeah, but it's
Well,
like, but I think the
basically,
effects of it.
She wasn't
Yeah.
spiking your drink. She was just doing that.
Yeah.
You know,
Now it is a
rubbing
cultural
in and all
norm.
this stuff and-
Right. Now it seems to be a cultural norm. I mean, if we're gonna talk about it, like he doesn't seem like perturbed by it. Like later on, he's not saying like, "Why do you do that?" Like he's like, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, like when he comes back to his senses. So there is there is that it is a cultural norm there. It is still weird though, by I guess our human sensibilities. So a little strange. But yeah.
Why did my friend James take my girl? Not cool, bro.
Well, there's
Give
also
me fire
implications.
stick.
There's also
Bros before
implications.
girls.
There's implications that they're a polyamorous society as well, because he doesn't seem to have. Well, he did have a problem. He didn't have a problem. I guess he thought of her as. Never mind. They're
He
maybe
did
monogamous.
He did
They're-
the CW runaway. Oh, he's
Well,
kissing my girl. I'm out of
Yeah,
here.
I don't know,
he-
it's an
he-
inter-
He threw the rifle down, didn't he? He threw the musket down and walked away.
I
was
wanted
another
to. Before we finish, I did want to talk about Kirk's Past, like the survey mission. I always love it when they mention something about Kirk's Past, and I thought it was interesting that he lived among these people. Like for how long? Like it's very cool. Like it's something I would love to see explored. I'm sure there's. I bet there's something in the book. You know, in the books that are written about this planet. The follow-up novel maybe goes into it more. So I'd love to read that and see more about it. But what did you guys think of that whole thing? And like, what about like, is this like this is new for me in the sense of where I had forgotten this aspect of this episode, and I thought of observation of like societies more like how it's depicted in TNG, where it's through a duck blind. But here he's like participating. He's like hiding,
Well,
like
this
not
is
living
more like
among them,
when,
and even confessed who he is to Tyree. Like Tyree knew Tyree knew that Kirk was, you know, an off-worlder and not from this planet.
Well,
and I
and the
guess you're
fact,
right. Sorry, Riker does live among
Yeah, I was
those
gonna
people
say
in
it's
that.
like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
like that Riker
Yeah,
episode.
it is like that one. But
I
sorry,
mean,
Tall.
that one's a little even more extreme. I'm sorry to say, because not only do they infiltrate, but like they have Riker like disguised as. I'm like, what's this Prime Directive you all talk about all the time? This is a little bit too far, my
Yeah.
friends.
yeah, I mean, definitely the Prime Directive is honored more in the breach than the whatever the rest of that phrase is in the acknowledgement. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Kirk wrote a report, you know, indicates this was a sanctioned thing he was doing, and it's the very same beat that where we have McCoy living with the Capellans, or like visiting the Capellans in Friday's Child. So maybe there was like some, you know, exchange program, not exchange program, but maybe this was like a fairly not uncommon thing, or at least a not unheard of thing, where as when you were starting your career out in Starfleet or wherever, to open your mind to new cultures and stuff, you would get stationed for brief periods on alien planets and kind of get a sense of what they were like. So I don't know. I agree. I think that's very world building. I mean, it doesn't totally jive with the Prime Directive, as Ruben says, but I like it.
What did you guys? Anyone else want to know more about Kirk's past? Could we have a lieutenant? Okay, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Oh no, is this Strange New Worlds?
No.
I think they should give. They should do a Kirk prequel show, but starring William Shatner now. Kirk at the Academy, but William Shatner now.
I tell you what, if anybody says bring Kirk to Strange New Worlds, I'm going to scream.
No, but this is another episode that I would say like Stranger World should like kind of do. I don't want to say a direct update of it, but just take the kind of ideas of it and do it a little bit better, and give it that proper B story. And you could do a one episode. I don't know. Supposedly Strange New World is going to be like
More episodic, right?
Yeah, right. So it'd be interesting to see them kind of do and that's not strange for Star Trek, because to me, like almost every Voyager episode, it's just a TNG or DS9 episode, but 2.0.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do it better, but most of the time,
Yeah. Sometimes. Well, when they used the dog as a witness to clear Paris's name, they went one step too far.
Wait, I haven't gotten to that episode. Is that real? They use the dog as a witness?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I think Tuvok even mind melds with it, doesn't he?
Well, we're about
Sorry,
we're about at
sorry.
the end of the episode. Do you guys have any final thoughts? And let's go ahead and give our ratings. I'll just say that like this discussion was really enjoyable for me. I'm gonna give this episode an 8 because I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And you know, there's a lot of elements of it that, as you say, like just like kind of our world building, and like, you know, there's just a lot of fruit here, if you will. So it's very cool. Anyone else want to go next?
I'll go. I give it a 6. I thought of you this week on Twitter when you were talking about shipping Kirk and Spock. Because, you know, after Spock was stabbed, you know, like I feel like Kirk was like walking out of sick bay, and he like looked. He was like,
"Oh yeah, that scene where he looks back at
and he's like, "Oh, Jim, like I don't know, it's too early to tell." And then I feel like as soon as he got back to his chair, to his captain's chair, he called him up again. He was like, "Hey, Bones." He's like, "Oh, like, you know, no progress."
That's a really good point. It's true. I like. There's a lot of evidence. I'm telling you.
No, we didn't talk about that healing power of the Vulcans that they.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the
where
healing power,
they get
cool,
like whoop their ass in the heel, like so Vulcans and Klingons. That's an interesting mix.
Go ahead, Robbie. You were gonna also chime in.
I didn't know that it was about the Vietnam War before I came in this discussion, but I got the message, and I suppose you could say that this episode for some people was too heavy, but I don't mind an episode that's not subtle in how it delivers its message, but I don't like a story that talks down to the audience and treats them like they're not intelligent. And I like sometimes subtler stories where you have to kind of figure out the message a bit more, even if that's a bit bad in design. I think that's good to keep you mulling over something, but it's also good to just get your message out there. And I quite like a lot of what Kirk was saying. I think he had some quite wise words. And I like the world building for this planet alone. 50-minute episodes, and we learn a decent amount about it. And I hope that's the kind of thing we get in Strange New Worlds, moral dilemmas, learning about cultures that are at odds, maybe, that kind of thing. I'd give it probably an 8 too.
Very cool. Father, are you there by any chance?
Can I go next? Because
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to.
Oh yeah,
split
you have
in
to
a minute
skedaddle.
here.
That's
Yeah, I
true.
gotta,
Go ahead, Sub-Commander.
My daughter is doing a little viola recital that is going to be
Ooh.
streamed from her camp. Yeah, I like this episode a lot. I guess I'll be a little stingier. I'll say 7 out of 10, just because I feel like there's some campy elements that could have been toned down a little bit, but always enjoy watching this one. And I'll just give a quick shout out to Janus Prohaska and that Mugatu suit, and it was originally supposed to be called a Gumato, but DeForest Kelly could not get the word out of his mouth, so they changed the name of the thing so that so it matched what he was actually
I'd like
saying.
to see the outtakes for that. I wonder if that'd be really fun.
Great to see you all. I'm going to engage my cloak here.
Thank you so much. I love that. Thank you so much for being on.
Take it easy, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Our Dadmiral, what have you to say?
Oh, 7.5 snakes in paradise. I enjoyed it. I think I agree with what Robbie's saying. I like it when it's trying to send a message. It's commenting on what's happening. We've also said that it's still valid today. There's still people being armed. They're giving them arms to do this, so it's still a relevant one now as it was back in the 60s. And it does it in an entertaining fashion, and it's not trying to spoon feed people and things like that. So anything that you can comment on the world, and that's what sci-fi is all about. That's why Star Trek is as big as it was. It was always a social commentary under the vehicle of science fiction, and that's always a good thing to do. So yeah, I enjoy it. It's a good episode. Is it the best? No, but it's still a good entertaining, and I'll always thank them for Nona on this one.
Martian Fire
I
State.
can't, when people put when you see them, like who do you fancy in Trek and all that? She's the first one.
That's awesome.
And they have her in those leather pants with the midriff showing. It's it's ridiculous.
I want to know what orange animal the fur is from. Like that's what I want to know.
Don't care.
We should digitally add like a monkey with no fur in the back.
There's an orangutan going like this.
With just its head with fur and no hair.
Yeah, it's true.
Dude, Nona's probably not even a really beautiful woman. She's a witch. She's probably old
enchanted.
and she just has,
I love. So
no.
We need to get a Nona TV backstory as well. It'd be cool. She could appear in Strange New Worlds. And that
if Nona appears on Strange New Worlds, I'll sign up for Paramount Plus.
Do you have Nona's wig?
I don't have Nona's wig. I wish
Next
I did.
to your microphone.
Oh, that's not Nona. You're thinking
That's
of Tyree. You're thinking of
Tyree.
Tyree.
Robbie's been getting Tyree mixed up all evening.
Captain RGD asks, when will you do TNG? We did it. There's a playlist on this channel, Captain RGD. Check it out. Also, you had a really cool question earlier, which is, would there ever be a Star Trek musical episode? I hope so. I'm a huge proponent. I would love to see it. It would be cool. There's all kinds of ways you could do it, like the universal translator broke, and so now it's like making everyone sing. I don't know.
They
Like
did all the different languages. They've done it with the languages, so why not do
I
it from them
mean-
singing? There are plenty of people in Star Trek that can
They've
sing.
toyed with it plenty of times with episodes where characters sing, and those
Yeah.
I can think of the Doctor in Seven singing a lot of times. Borderline, not musical, but like it's close. Like they sing a lot.
Someone could do it in the holodeck.
You could totally do it. You could totally do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could totally
Or
do
maybe
it.
yeah,
a
that's true.
species that when it comes for the translator, every time they speak, it's singing.
If they did it in Buffy and they did it in Supergirl, they can do it in Star Trek.
Absolutely.
Ruben, real quick, what is your final thoughts and rating on this episode?
Yeah, I agree with most of what everybody said here. It's an entertaining episode. It's a very interesting episode. It's got a lot of stuff in it. Klingons a little bit, witches, sure, guns, phasers, prime directive ethics, stuff, weird erotic BDSM slapping sequences. Like it's just got everything in it. It's super entertaining. So I give it. I'm asking Scotty to beam down 66 flintlocks out of 100.
Nice. So roughly a 6.5, 6.6, like around there. That's cool. Very nice. Father,
And yes, I agree. Buffy the Musical episode was
Oh.
great.
Yes.
Fuck
It's
yeah.
the only episode of Buffy I've ever seen.
Oh, that's fine. It's
I've
a
never
great
seen
episode.
Buffy at all.
I've got to
I've
watch
never
it though.
seen
Everyone
Buffy
loves
either.
the show. Yeah. But yeah, it's on one of the services, so I'll probably check it out.
It's on
Father, I
Amazon.
think, is indisposed. I think he may give this episode. I'm if I had to guess, like probably close to 8 snakes in
No,
Eden.
I think he'd probably give it about, because he said he didn't like it as much as he did as a
Oh,
kid.
that's
I
right,
think he'd
that's
probably
right.
give more 6, maybe a 6. I
So
think.
we're guessing. Everyone guessed Father's rating. Jill gave it 8 flintlocks. Is Tyree's wig on backwards? Gave it 8 flintlocks. And then I think that was the only rating we got from the audience. Hey guys, thanks so much. This was super fun talking about this episode. I don't want the discussion to end, just like Picard doesn't want the game to end. But we must. So live
Now
long
he's a
and
robot.
prosper.